Welcome to Palm Bay Live, celebrating 2 years in business. Welcome to Palm Bay Live, celebrating 2 years in business. Welcome to Palm Bay Live, celebrating 2 years in business. Join me on August 9th and 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern each day for a series of debates surrounding judicial candidates for County Court Judge, Groups 2 and Group 4. You can watch online at facebook.com and youtube.com/Palm Bay Live and palmbaylive.com. Join me, won't you? Welcome to Palm Bay Live, celebrating 2 years in business.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Good evening and welcome to Palm Bay Live. With me today in the studio is Mr. David Barker and Judge Kelly Ingram. And good evening. Welcome, folks.
Good evening.
Welcome to the platform. And I'm going to start off by asking you to introduce yourself. These two individuals are running for a county court judge, and I believe this is group 2, right? And so we're going to ask you to introduce yourself to the public and state why you're running and why you're here. So let's go ahead and start with, they say ladies first. So we're going to start with Judge Ingram.
Okay, good evening, sir. Thank you for having us here this evening. I'm Judge Ingram. I've lived in Brevard County for approximately 45 years. I graduated Cocoa Beach High School. Immediately after graduating Cocoa Beach High School, I worked for NASA for 5 years. During that time, I attended University of Central Florida and received my bachelor's degree. Always knowing I wanted to be an attorney, I then went to law school at Florida A&M University and got my Juris Doctor degree. I graduated in the top 15% of the class, cum laude graduate. Always knowing I wanted to be an attorney, I immediately took a job with the state attorney's office as a prosecutor. In that position, I was in a position to do what was right. After being in that position, I thought I could do a better job of doing what is right by becoming a judge. So after my stint at the state attorney's office, I opened a law firm and I did criminal defense work as well as family law. I wanted to work on both sides of the spectrum to make sure that, honestly, that I could be a fair judge. I had to work both sides so I could understand both sides, and I did that with the intent of becoming a judge. I was elected in 2016. I've been a sitting judge now in Brevard County for 5.5 years. I presided over criminal cases for 4.5 of those years, and the last year I've presided over civil cases. I've been the administrative county judge in 2021, which is a leadership role of the county judges in Brevard County. I did administration type work for the county judges, reassigned county judges, recused judges due to conflict of interest. And for 2 years, I was the 18th Judicial Circuit for the Conference County Court judges. And just a month ago, I was sworn in by our Florida Chief Justice, Munez, to continue to be the circuit rep for the year 2022 and 2023. I was previously appointed by the County Commission to serve on the Misdemeanor Probation Service Selection Committee, and I've presided over thousands of criminal cases and civil cases. I've been married to my husband for 26 years. He's a retired Navy officer. We have one daughter together, and we have 3 grandchildren that we like to spend time with during our free time.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Mr. Barker, you're up next.
My name's Baker, David Baker, not Barker. I am running for county court judge. I grew up in Brevard County. I was born in Rockledge, raised in Cocoa. I went into the Army at 17, actually went to basic training at 18, and I did 20 years in the Army, 10 in the regular Army, and additional 10 in the Florida National Guard. While I was in the Army, I went to college and got my AA degree from Brevard Community College. And then when I left the active duty forces, I went to the police academy and became a police officer at Cocoa Police Department. I worked there for 15 years. And while I was there, I was patrol officer, SWAT officer, detective, and a sergeant, a supervisor. While I was at Cocoa Police Department, I continued to go to school, and I got my bachelor's degree from the University of Central Florida, and I graduated magna cum laude with a bachelor's in both criminal justice and public administration. And then I went and got my master's degree in public administration. And while I was there, as part of the National Guard, I was sent to Afghanistan. And while I was in Afghanistan, I took the law school admission test and applied to law school while I was there. And when I came back, I was also retiring from the Army after 20 years of service. And I started law school, and I went to Barry University in Orlando and became a lawyer, graduating in the top 15% of my class there. And as soon as I graduated from there, I opened up a law firm. And for about 1.5 years, I was also a lawyer and a police officer. After being there for about being a part-time lawyer and a full-time police officer for about 1.5 years, I changed over and went full-time as an attorney. And as an attorney, I do all kinds of civil law. I've done some limited criminal law. I've done all types of civil law to include torts, family law, personal injury, evictions, wills, trust, and estates, pretty much anything that you can think of in civil law. I've done it for the last going on 14 years. I have had a practice in Rockledge since I opened in 2009. And I've decided that at this point, I have the experience that I think is necessary to run for judge. I don't think me and Judge Ingram, we both entered the Florida bar within 6 months of each other. And at the time that she ran for that election, I didn't feel that I had the skills that I needed at that time. I thought I needed more experience as a lawyer, working more cases and handling different types of law. So I continue to do that until now. And at this point, I think because all of my roots are back in public service, and I've served, the military, I've served the community, and I've served as a lawyer, I would like to go back into service. And I think that this is the time for me to do that. And I think that my background and skill set makes me the best person for this position.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Baker, let's start with you. You talk about your background of the type of trials, cases you took on. So, how have you tried jury trials, and how many?
I have not tried any jury trials. When you're in tort litigation, most litigation for that fact, less than 5% of cases go to trial. And criminal law is a little higher because sometimes there's no other way, because you're looking at mandatory jail time and sentences like that. But when you're talking about civil torts, it's money. And the risk of losing more money by going to court usually stops it from going to trial. There have been several occasions where we got to the courthouse steps, like they say, where we were completely prepared and ready to go to trial, but we did not go because both parties thought it was in their best interest to go ahead and settle the case. And in civil law, it's always better, or almost always better, to find a settlement that works for both parties instead of taking the risk of a jury trial. So no jury trials, except for close but no cigar, pretty much.
Okay, audience, for those who are just joining us, some folks are used to the platform. You usually are able to take questions from the audience, but because this is these are the judicial candidates, we're not going to be able to do that because we already screened the questions that we can ask. It's very important that we do not ask questions of the candidates in this kind of setting because they may have to opine on those type of questions in a future hearing. So we have to be very selective in the type of questions that we ask them. So yes, I did run the questions by them prior to this go live session, just to make sure that everything is on the up and up. I don't want them to get in trouble in future settings. If they do, I mean, Judge Ingram is already on the bench, but if they do have to hear such a case in the future. So just to make you guys know, that's why we're not taking any live questions in this setting tonight. Okay, Judge Ingram, your turn.
Okay. How many jury trials and how many non-jury trials?
Correct.
Okay. If I had to estimate, as a prosecutor, I probably conducted maybe 25 to 30 jury trials as a prosecutor, with a burden of proof beyond the reasonable doubt, and that was on the state attorney's office. As a defense attorney, I probably defended 10 to 15 jury trials for my client. So I've had 35, 40 jury trials as an attorney. Non-jury trials, I've probably had 80 or so as an attorney, between being a prosecutor, a defense attorney, as well as a family law attorney, because we conducted non-jury trials in family law. So I've probably had 80 of those. As a sitting judge, I have presided over numerous jury trials. If I had to guess, probably 80 to 100 or more jury trials, criminal trials I presided over, and probably 120 to 130 non-jury trials that I've presided over. As a non-jury trial, as a judge, you are the trier of the fact. So that is the difference between a jury trial and a non-jury trial.
Okay, Mr. Baker, I don't think you said how many non-jury trials you tried.
I don't have an exact total, because in order to do that, I'd actually have to go through all my case files and look. But I believe it's somewhere between 75 and 100 non-jury trials in different areas of law. A lot of them have been family law, but there were also other trials for not specifically family law, but other areas of law.
Okay. Judge Ingram, I think you mentioned it, but you may want to say, are you board certified in any area of law?
I am not.
Okay. And what about you, Mr. Baker?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right. What is the most significant case that you work on as a lawyer? Let's start with Judge Ingram.
So that's a little difficult to answer. I did read that question and I thought about it. And as a criminal defense attorney, every one of those cases were significant because they were significant to my client. So is there one specific case? No, because everyone was significant to my client. The same as family law. Family law is very difficult. You're dealing with children, time sharing with parents and the kids. So every case that I did as a defense attorney really was significant. As a prosecutor, they were also significant because it was my job to prosecute the crimes. If a crime was committed, it was my job to prosecute it. So if you're asking me to single out any one particular case, I can't say that. I'm going to say that they're all significant. On the bench as a judge, I've had some significant cases that have been in the media that have been very, very difficult. But unfortunately, those cases I cannot comment on because I was the presiding judge.
Understood. Mr. Baker, how about you?
Well, I definitely say anytime you're dealing with family law, that's very significant. It's extremely significant to your clients because it does involve time sharing. And even if it doesn't involve time sharing, when somebody splits up from a marriage, how they come out of that marriage can very well determine the rest of their lives and where they're going to go from there. And the older you are, the more it can impact you. But if I was to think of one case that really has my attention, I worked it was a wrongful death case, and there had been two people that had died in the case. And in this case, it had a mixed problem where there was a paternity issue with a father that had not been around, had avoided any responsibility for the children, had made sure that he was never deemed the father so he wouldn't have to pay child support. And one of the children that had died was an infant, and there were two siblings in the wreck. And he tried to get into the case, and what he would do in that position is take away the inheritance from the siblings who would have been the next in line to receive. So we basically had a paternity proceeding in the middle of a massive tort action, and a tort action is a wrong. Personal injuries are torts. And this was a multi-million-dollar case. And I remember in one hearing, I had to question 15 different individuals, including a couple of the lawyers in this county who had acted badly in this. And what the outcome of this was going to make a difference as to whether or not these young girls got their portion of the inheritance based on this, or whether the father who had done nothing for these children took it. So even though this was a case about money, it was also a case about right and wrong. These children, these daughters, deserved that money and should have got it. And this person that wouldn't even claim to be the father all of a sudden jumps in after the death. And that case was very significant to me and very important to me. And the case actually went to an appeal. The hearings on the paternity issue took over, I believe we spent 12 hours in hearings on that. But ultimately, an agreement was reached. But it was a very significant case for me. And that one I don't think I'll ever forget.
Okay, great. So what kind of things do you do outside of the legal profession, Judge Ingram? What kind of things do you do outside of the legal profession?
Well, I grew up in Cocoa Beach, so I absolutely love the beach. So the most time I can spend on the beach, I do that. I also enjoy playing tennis and certainly time with the grandkids.
Okay, that was a short and sweet answer. Okay. Mr. Baker, how about you?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Okay, what kind of things do you like to do outside of the legal profession?
Well, I like to hunt. I'm a hunter, and I actually have property in West Virginia, and I've got property up there that I hunt on every year. And even if I'm not hunting, just to go up there and walk the mountains and enjoy the scenery. And um, my wife has gotten me into painting. I'm not any good at it, but it's fun to try, and we do some of that. So we try to do that. Plus, we have 10 grandchildren um, and 7 children between us. So we've got a lot of that going on in addition. So we keep busy.
Okay, Mr. Baker, the next question is for you, starting with you, sir. What do you believe a judge job entails? You know, Judge Ingram more than likely have an idea what that is because she's currently serving on the bench. But what about you? What is your philosophy? What do you think that entails?
Well, I think there's a lot to being a judge. I mean, a judge, first off, has got to be a scholar and an expert in the law. And they have to understand the fundamentals of the law, and they have to know how to interpret case law. But all attorneys have to do that. So that's just a requirement of being an attorney. But for a judge, you need to be at the top of your game. They also need to be fair. They need to be fair to everyone, no matter where they come from, what walk of life, what their condition is socioeconomically. It needs to be fair to everybody. A judge has a duty to do that. In addition to that, a judge needs to be not only a role model for the court, because in the court, the judge is the king or queen of their fiefdom. Their courtroom is their courtroom, and they are completely in charge of it. And that's same throughout every court I've been in. So you have to be a leader in the courtroom. You have to be the example. But I think it goes farther than that. You have to be a leader and example in public. You know, that means you've got to conduct yourself in a way that other people will respect you and that you reflect, you know, very well upon the court and your office. And that doesn't matter what you're doing. Um, you know, if you're out in public, I'm not a teetotaler. I like a glass of wine like anybody else. But you got to make sure that you're not doing anything. You're not getting intoxicated in front of people. You're not giving the wrong impression. So I think you have to do that as part of being a judge, is to be a role model and make sure that your actions inside and outside the courtroom are above reproach. So I think it's the whole thing of being a judge, plus the technical skills that every judge needs to have, the fairness and the legal knowledge.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. Sir, Mr. Baker gave us what he thought is the job entails. So, Judge Ingram, you're currently serving on the bench. So I'm going to twist the question for you. Okay.
Sure.
So you're currently serving on the bench. So is the job exactly what you thought he would be?
I do, with a couple of caveats. Um, I didn't realize as much that I was going to have the opportunity to mentor individuals. Um, and I mean that by students that are in undergraduate or law school. I didn't know that we actually had the freedom to do that. Um, I did know that I was able to perhaps mentor or help some of the defendants that are first time offenders. I certainly can help those individuals. But I've learned that being a judge, I'm actually able to do that more freely than I had anticipated. Um, the time management, of course, before you're a judge, you have no idea how many cases you're going to have. It's in civil that I do right now, I probably have 7,500 cases that I'm presiding over as we speak. I had no idea that it was going to be that much. So it does require some good time management skills and some good calendaring. Um, so that was a little different than I had anticipated.
Okay. All right. The next question is for Judge Ingram, starting with you. Besides COVID, what do you think is the biggest problem facing the court system today?
Money, definitely money. We certainly, like I just expressed, I have probably 7,500 cases that are assigned to me. If we had additional judges, we could get through that quicker. The backlog wouldn't be so bad because we all have to remember if somebody's in a court case, it's affecting their lives one way or the other, whether you're the plaintiff or the respondent or the defendant. So when there's such a backlog, it makes it difficult. So obviously, funding, uh, we always had clerks. And in criminal court, you always have a clerk with you. In civil court, you do not. So I found myself last week presiding over a non-jury trial, said, just one moment, let me mark all of these documents into evidence. That takes extra time. So that holds things up. So obviously, if there was more funding, things could be much smoother in our judicial system.
Okay, Mr. Baker.
Well,
Your
there's no
thoughts?
doubt. Money is an issue. It's been an issue. When they took the clerks away, I remember when that happened, and it just made everything harder for everyone, not just the judges. I mean, the judges, of course, because they've got to do that now, but everybody in the room. It slowed down everything. But I think there's other issues too. I think, and these are more systemic. There needs to be better civics classes. There's so many people that don't understand the role of the courts, what their job is, and what they can and cannot do. I mean, there's controversial rulings, and the people are upset about the ruling, but they don't understand the law behind it or why the ruling was ruled. And I'm not going to say any ruling is correct or wrong. I'm just saying that people don't understand how the court system works, and that the judge's job is to follow the laws as they've been written out by our representatives in Senate, not to make the law. And a lot of people just don't understand the role. Judges can't just do whatever they want. They don't have that option. Their job is to carry out the law, not to make law. And I think a lot of people don't really understand how our system works. And I think that that's a problem that not only the judges face, but anybody in the legal community faces with a public that just hasn't been taught enough about how our system of government works, especially the judiciary.
Okay, great. Mr. Baker, starting with you, sir. What are the major influences in your life and why? What are the major influences in your life and why?
My mom. My mom is the major influence in my life. When I was a kid, I grew up in Cocoa, and my father died when I was young. And my mom was put in a position where she had to raise me and my sister with no money. And at that point, she was a housewife. So no skills, no working background. And I watched her go to night school and become an RN and go from working 3 jobs at minimum wage to earning a really good salary as the head nurse at the family birthplace at Wusthof Hospital. And she showed me that you can do it. You can put yourself to it. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is what you do to get to the next place and how are you going to get there. And if you put in the time and the effort, it can happen. And I learned that from my mom. And that's how I got where I am. Just, I decided I'm going to go to college. Why? Because I figured I could, and I did night school just like her. And that encouragement and that role model and example has helped me get to where I am today.
Okay, Judge Ingram, your turn.
I have 2. One, obviously, my mother. She always told me, you need to set goals. So my whole life, I've been a goal setter. I've always been very determined. My mother taught me that, and I think that's what got me where I am today. That was probably half of my life that my mother was the major influence. The other half of my life is my husband. I couldn't be where I am today without him. I would not have been able to go to law school without him. I would have never been able to be elected without his support, whether physically, financially, in 2016. And I have his complete support again this time. So without my husband, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. So he has been a great influence on me. He's never once requested that I don't follow any of my dreams or my goals, and he's been by my side the entire time.
Awesome. Awesome. Great spouses. Okay, great. So let's keep it going. Um, Judge Ingram, please describe your administrative experience. What are your primary strengths as a supervisor or as administrator?
Well, I was a business owner. I had a law firm. Prior to going to law school, I had a taxi business where there was multiple employees. I studied human resources in undergraduate degree. So the main thing I've learned how to work with employees, treat them respectfully, and listen to them. As an administrator, as an administrative judge, I know what it means to work as a team. It's not because I'm the leader, it's a team. And I consider that in everything I do. Um, as of today, I only supervise one individual, and that's my judicial assistant. And I think she tells me what to do and when to do it and how to do it. So I just learned to accept that, and things are great.
Awesome. Thank you for the answer. Mr. Baker, how about you?
At 21, I became a sergeant and was put in charge of the team in the Army. I had 5 other soldiers that worked with me. And that was a Hawk unit, which nobody knows what that is, but it's a firing system for missiles. And we worked together as a team doing that. Throughout the Army, I moved up into different positions to include platoon sergeant, where you have approximately 45 soldiers underneath you, and then broken into separate squads, and each squad reports to you as platoon sergeant. You report to the first sergeant. And then I did that for several years. I was promoted to first sergeant, which makes you the highest ranking non-commissioned officer in a unit, where all the platoon sergeants reported to me. And my job was to make sure that soldiers got what they needed, that they had the stuff, the equipment, the food, the bullets, whatever it was. My job was to take care of soldiers. The commander led, and I took care of the troops. That was my job. I did that here in the Florida National Guard. I was the first sergeant of the Melbourne unit. And in Afghanistan, I was first sergeant of an MP unit of approximately 175 soldiers. In addition to that, I was a sergeant at the Cocoa Police Department. So I had a squad. My squad varied from 5 to 9 to 10 officers that reported directly to me. In that position, I had to check every police report, every 923 arrest affidavit, make sure that there was probable cause in there, make sure that they gathered the evidence and the facts, make sure they're grammatically correct. So I did that for over 8 years at the Cocoa Police Department. And now I currently run a law firm where I have attorneys that work for me, paralegals that work for me, secretaries, bookkeeper. So I've had a little bit of experience when it comes to administration. I also have a master's of public administration. So at one point I thought I was going to be a police chief, but I talked too much. So it seemed like lawyer was the next best choice.
I hear you, sir. Thank you. All right. All right. Let's keep it going. So with that said, Mr. Baker, your turn. Um, what is your general judicial philosophy? What is your general judicial philosophy?
I think we talked about that. I know that me and Judge Ingram talked about this, and I'm pretty sure there were reasons why we didn't think that that would be an appropriate question. Yeah. And Judge, if you could, am I wrong on that? Can you hear me?
Yes, I would agree. That is a question that I can't answer because my personal philosophies aren't important as doing the job as a judge. It's just one of those questions that are borderline that the judicial canons may not allow us to answer.
Okay, I understand. We'll keep it moving. All right. So then the next question should be, why should voters support you rather than your opponent? So let's start with Mr. Baker on that one.
Well, I think they should support me because I actually have more overall experience. When it comes to the law, I've been doing more for longer. Like I mentioned before, me and Judge Ingram both entered the bar within 6 months of each other. And then she went to the state's attorney's office, had a limited time in private practice, and then became a judge. At that time, I did not have the experience to be a judge. I didn't have the training. I didn't have enough knowledge. Since then, I've increased that. I've worked even more cases, and I think the fact that I've worked different types of law has led me to know more about the law, more about the whole system. And that information by itself gives me an edge because it hasn't been stuck into only what a county court judge does, which is limited to misdemeanors in civil under 30 or 35,000. And that limitation, not that she doesn't have great experience on the bench. I'm not discounting that at all. But that, and with my background and my experience that I can bring to the bench, from working with people from foreign countries and foreign countries, different forms of government, working as a police officer on the street where I've actually seen the results of not just what's on a piece of paper on a 92301 arrest affidavit, but I've been there when people are bleeding, when they're being taken to the hospital. I've seen it. I've also seen how people that have been swept up in the net, because I've been there. I've seen that too. So I think I bring something to the bench that my opponent just hasn't had the opportunity to do just because she hasn't been in those positions. So I think that makes me the best candidate for this position.
Okay, Judge Ingram.
Well, if we had 30 minutes, I could talk for 30 minutes.
No, you don't.
Why? But I'm going to make it as brief as I can. As far as overall experience, I would disagree with Mr. Baker. I have worked in all roles of the courtroom. I was a prosecutor. I was a defense attorney. I've been a presiding judge. 95%, 90 to 95% of the cases you handle as a county court judge involves criminal cases. My whole career, I have worked on criminal cases aside from some family law. Mr. Baker has indicated previously that he does not handle criminal cases because if he were to defend somebody, he may let him off and he couldn't handle that. So 90 to 95% of the cases a county court judge handles is criminal. I have dealt with criminal my entire legal career. I've had non-jury trials. I've had juries in every role: prosecutor, defense attorney, judge. Mr. Baker indicated earlier he has none of that experience. I also know I have the proper temperament. It can be very difficult sitting as a judge. Certainly emotions are in the courtroom. Some attorneys are very zealous for their clients, and you have to have the proper temperament as a judge. I know I have that experience. And most importantly, we deal with jurors. We need to respect jurors' times. I know how to do that. Nobody wants to be a juror, but they get called in. It's very important that you manage the time efficiently with jurors. I know how to do that, and Mr. Baker has had none of that experience that I've had. So I'm going to say I am the most experienced person for this. One, I've been sitting judge for 5.5 years. I've done it. I know what it takes. I've done an exceptional job, and I should continue to be a county court judge.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify one thing. Okay, I never said I couldn't take somebody losing a case. What I have said, though, is knowing my luck, I'd get somebody off for jaywalking and they'd shoot some guy that I've known for 30 years as a police officer in the pinky and they end up dying. That's what I've said. Not that I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to handle them losing or going to jail. So I don't know where that came from, but that wasn't me. So that's all.
Okay. Judge Ingram, did you want to follow up since he did that?
No, I just recall hearing that he never did criminal. I also do recall hearing his statement about the jaywalking. So that is correct, his statement, but he does not practice criminal law.
Okay. All right. let's keep it moving. So, please describe your firsthand experience, if any, dealing with people who are different from you socially, economically, or politically. How do you deal with these folks? So let's start with who do we leave off with? Mr. Baker, go ahead.
Well, I've done that my entire life. I mean, uh, when I went in the Army at 18 years old, they throw you in a barracks with 90 of your closest strangers you've never met and expect you to live together. Those people come from everywhere, all walks of life, every social economic condition, every religion, every background you can even think of. So I've done it since I was very young. I've also done it in foreign countries. When I was in Afghanistan, a very different culture, in different locations throughout this country where I've served at. Um, Besides just the military background, as a police officer, you deal with people from every walk of life. You deal with people that have nothing, that are living homeless in the streets, in the woods, to people that are millionaires. And you have to deal with all these people, and you have to try to communicate with them, make sure they understand what you're saying, what you're trying to get across to them. And I've done that virtually all my life, or all of my adult life. And for me, it's just second nature. I do it in my own practice. I have all kinds of clients from every walk, every gender, um, people that have different sexual orientations, whatever, you name it. I've represented them, I've worked with them, and I have no problem dealing with all those people. And I know that I can treat them fairly and as equals and make sure that I do the right thing when I'm working with them.
Okay, Judge Ingram.
Well, I've had experience professionally. Prior to going to law school, I was a welfare counselor. So obviously, those individuals are socially, economically challenged. And it was my goal to help them become self sufficient. So I worked with these people every day trying to help them. Um, Socially, I have a vast variety of people I interact with socially. When I graduated law school, federal judge Johnny Antone swore me in, and it was a huge occasion. And he came up to me at the end and he said, "Kelly, I understand why you are so well rounded. You have people here that are probably eating off the curb, and you have people here that are millionaires. I have been around all aspects of life my entire life. As a judge, I see all kinds. I see the very wealthy that are plaintiffs. I see defendants that are getting ready to be evicted, or defendants that are stealing a soda or food for their children. And I treat them fairly. We're all humans. We Some of us didn't ask for to where we're be at today. So I have no issues treating anybody fairly.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Judge Ingram, you're up next. Um, what factors are considered in granting and setting bail amounts for defendants? And what do you believe is the primary consideration for that?
So there's two considerations, and I do this as a sitting judge every 11 weeks. I am at the jail, and one of the things I do is set an appropriate, reasonable bond. And there's two things that I must consider, and that is one, to protect the society from individuals. The other is to assure the defendant's presence at court. And there's many factors that I have to look at, but those are the two main goals when setting any sort of bail or bond amount. I consider whether they failed to appear for court previously. If they have a history of failing to appear for court, then it's my job to increase the bond to assure their presence at court. Depending on the allegation of the crime, if it's violent, depending on how violent, um, I set the bond based on that. I also consider their past criminal history, if they're repeat offenders of the same type of offense. But the two main purposes for giving a bond is to protect the society and to assure someone's presence in court.
Mr. Baker, your turn.
That's exactly right. The idea is if you're going to release them back out, that you need to be assured that they're going to come to court. And the factors you do look at is their history. Their history is going to be very important. Have they failed to appear numerous times? Is there a reason to believe they're a flight risk? Where are they from? Are they from here? Are they from another state? Is it likely they'll flee the state? All those factors have to be considered whenever you're looking at bond. Not just the crime itself, but the background of the individual. So the seriousness of the crime that was committed, that person's background, and what do you need to do to make sure that they will be there when it's time to face the court?
Okay, great. Thank you for that answer, sir. Okay, so we're coming up on the last question for the night, and then I'll give you guys a platform to give your final closing statements. So the question of the night is this, going to be, Mr. Baker, we'll start off with you. If you became aware of an unethical conduct on the part of a trial advocate in a case in which you're presiding, how would you handle it? And two, do you believe judges should be required to report attorney misconduct?
Well, I'm going to start with the last part of that. Judges and attorneys both are ethically bound to report misconduct to the bar. It's a requirement of the bar to report misconduct. With that being said, as a judge, you have to look at the degree, or a lot of this comes to the opinion of the judge. Is this something that I can handle myself? Can I speak to this person and correct it? Is this something that is beyond that? And do I need to do it? But the judge is always the person that's responsible for the conduct in their courtroom. And I think the judge always has to keep control of their courtroom. So they have a duty, but so does every other lawyer, to make sure that unethical conduct is not tolerated by anyone that's a member of the bar or a member of the judiciary.
Judge Ingram, your turn.
Well, I've obviously had this come up in front of me. Some of it perhaps may not have been necessarily unethical, but not professional. And I have called the attorneys to the bench, and I've spoke to them about the behavior or the incidents. And I would kind of tell them, you need to get this straightened out. You need to fix this. This is an issue. If it's not, then I may have to report you to the Florida bar. That would be something that perhaps is not unethical. Maybe it's personal issues, just getting to court on time, being late all the time. That's an issue. That's not something that I would be required to report to the Florida bar. If there's blatant lying, completely unethical, because attorneys are officers of the court, if that occurs, depending on the unethical behavior, I may speak to the attorney first. If not, the 18th Judicial Circuit also has a committee that you can discuss any unethical behavior with the committee first. And then the committee may meet with the attorney and then determine if it should be reported to the Florida bar. So I would not 100% agree with Mr. Baker that I have an obligation as a judge to report it. That's why we do have these committees, because certainly we don't want attorneys getting in trouble with the Florida bar. And if it's something that's not too egregious, then we can help them here in the 18th Judicial Circuit.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was the last question. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you guys the podium to be able to give you your Trump speech, tell everyone why they should vote for you and why you're the best candidate for this job. Advise them where to go and find more information about your candidacy, your website. If you have a committee set up that they can turn to ask questions, please advise them of that as well. And wish you best of luck, during this campaign season. And I thank you so much for joining me in this platform. But I'll come back again. But I'm going to allow you guys 2 minutes each to wrap it up. Go ahead, and I'm going to start with the ladies first. Judge Ingram, go ahead and give your speech.
Okay, well, I have the most experience. I've been a sitting judge for 5.5 years. I know what it takes to be a judge. I am known as being fair and unbiased and impartial. I'm knowledgeable of the law, But the law changes, so I'm willing to learn and adapt to the changes, to the law, the policies, the procedures. I understand the importance of listening to litigants. I treat everybody with dignity and respect. I have done this. Most, most importantly, I adhere to the laws and I make rulings consistent with the Constitution. Being a judge for Brevard County taxpayers have an investment in me. I've been a very good judge and it's very disruptive to a court system. If there's a turning of judge every 6 years, consistency is very important. And you'll only maintain consistency by voting to reelect me on August 23rd, or early voting, which is August 13th through August 20th. If you have any questions or want further information regarding me, you can go to my website, and it's Ingram, Ingram, for Judge, FOR, judge.com. There you can submit questions, and there's more information regarding myself.
Okay, thank you, Judge Ingram. And go ahead, Mr. Baker, your turn.
Yes. I'm asking people to vote for me. I believe I bring a unique set of skills and background that are not currently on the bench. Once I become the next county court judge of Brevard County, I will do everything to uphold the standards of the bench, to be the most professional judge in the circuit, and to make sure that everyone that comes before me is given a chance and opportunity to be heard, to have their day in court, and to have a chance to walk out of there understanding what's happening. I know that there's thousands of cases and time is of an essence, but there's no reason that you shouldn't take the time to explain to the people that come before you what is happening and why. Too many people go through the system with no idea, especially if they're pro se. If they do not have an attorney, they don't know what's happening. They don't know why it's happening. Oftentimes, people that do have attorneys don't know what's happening. They're just doing what their attorney told them to do. When I'm sitting on the bench, I'm going to make sure everyone has a chance to know what's going on so that they make informed decisions before they plea or before they make a bargain that they might not understand. I think that the court has a duty to do that. They're the gatekeepers. They're the ultimate judge. That's exactly what they're there to do. I think I can do that. I know I can do that. And I'm asking that everyone take a look at my record. Check us both out. We're on Google. You can find all kinds of information about both of us. Take a look at our records. Look at my resume. Look at my background. Look at what I've done and how I've got here. I think I will be the best choice, and I ask for your vote for the Brevard County Court, Seat 2 in this election. Thank you.
And thank you both for joining me tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And looking forward to seeing you on the campaign trail. And I want to thank you, the public, for joining us. And please, please share this live with your neighbors, your friends, so they too may make an informed decision about who to vote for. So, share with your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues at work, etc. Just in case they want to find out more about Judge Ingram and Mr. Baker. Okay. And I know who I'm going to vote for based on what I heard tonight, and I hope you do too. And so see you at the polls and have a blessed night. And I talk to you guys soon. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.